Hi everyone, Sajid Amit here, and welcome to my review of this magnificent amplifier. It's the Headamp CFA3. I mean, guys, it's a very difficult amp to review because I've been waiting for this for so long, and it's very difficult to sort of express all my thoughts and feelings in a very short video. But I'll keep this short. First and foremost, a shout out to Justin Wilson of Headamp. So I've known Justin for several years now. I bought his Headamp GSX Mini, which was this beautiful blue plated, and you can get the plating, the front plate in different colors, headphone amplifier, which had a significant amount of power for me at that time, which I think it was 4 watts into 50 ohms. And that headphone amp made me realize what amps can do. And honestly speaking, a lot of audiophiles have no idea what amps can do because I always get a few comments here and there when I do these amp reviews that, hey, stop peddling snake oil because amps don't matter. Guys, I'm not peddling cables, and I understand a lot of cables might not have a perceptible difference to the sonic qualities that they induce, but amps make a difference. Amps make an enormous amount of difference. I went from a Topic A90 driving to Zavara to a GSX Mini, which is not even Headamp's flagship headphone amp. And the difference was night and day. So Zavara was slamming more, it was warmer, it was bigger sounding, it was less digital sounding. All these things matter even if the frequency response will not change. Because the FR is giving you half the story. It's not giving you the entire story of how you perceive sound. SPL, which is the y-axis of an FR, is not the entire picture, and more on that later. I've discussed this at length. If you want to see my discussion on this, go check out the Campfire Trifecta, which is an IM. Check out that review because in that discussion, I have shared some research and a lot of thinking about how you guys need to take the FR very seriously, but it is by no means the only thing that matters in terms of sonic enjoyment. Okay, I digress. Headamp is an online dealer of a variety of brands run by Justin Wilson. So this is definitively a shout out to Justin Wilson. I bought this with my own money. I got a bit of a discount, but I am giving this shout out because this guy is great to work with. He's an online dealer, so he can give you great deals. He carries E-Stat headphones, dynamic driver headphones, planar headphones, IMs even. And I bought a bunch of things from him. I bought the Campfire Trifecta from him. I bought the GSX Mini. I have this, and I have the Abyss AB1226 coming through from him. So because I've bought a lot of things from him, and I've also bought the Core Day from him, I am very comfortable recommending him. However, this is an area where he's not performing the job of a dealer, but the job of a manufacturer. And this guy is interesting in that he's not just a business person. He makes amps, and he makes some of the best amps in the business. His most famous amplifier is the beautiful Blue Hawaii, which is this sort of be-all, end-all, a flagship, the holy grail of E-Stat aficionados. It's a 2-piece unit with the power unit and, of course, the amp. And interestingly, what he's mastered is taking the designs of Kevin Wilson and I'm so sorry, Kevin Gilmore. Kevin Gilmore is the granddaddy of DIY amplifier designs. And of course, he initially was building amps, but then he made his designs available to the greater community, to the DIY community, and achieved cult status. So Kevin Gilmore has cult status in the headphone section of the hobby. A lot of experienced, seasoned audiophiles that know sort of live and die by Kevin Gilmore's designs. I mean, he's designed E-Stat amps, like I've talked about. He's designed headphone amplifiers. So this is actually based off of a Kevin Gilmore design, which was initially supposed to be a 2-unit device with the power unit and the amp. But where Justin Wilson innovated is he's managed to put this entire design in a single chassis, in this beautiful machine aluminum chassis with this wonderful industrial design with heat sinks on top, because this generates a whole lot of heat. This is all heat sinks, right? And it's pretty heavy. I'll give you the specs in a bit, but this is a diminutive amplifier if you look at other amps in the business. Yet it outputs 15 watts at 50 ohms, and that is incredible because that's around the impedance level of a Zavara and an Abyss AB12665TC. And the Imanis is also pretty difficult to drive. This drives any hard-to-drive headphone without breaking a goddamn sweat. It's got grunt, it's got punch for days, it's got sound stage, it's got resolution. All this for $4,000. $4,000 might seem expensive, and it is expensive. However, if you consider where amps are headed, if you want the absolute end of the road Summit-Fi amps, the Audma Maestro HP1A1 that I have here is a $10,000 amp. And I can think of a lot of $15,000 amps and $20,000 amps. There is the AIC Riviera, there is the Viva Egoista, there is the Mascobo MK465, there's of course the Red October XL from Amp and Sound, and plenty of others, guys. There's now this Raider amp. So there's a whole bunch of amps. I'm drawing a blank, but there's a whole bunch of amps now in the $15,000 range, because people are willing to pay for that, and these amps do offer you sonic betterment, and of course not extreme betterment. I mean, if you look at an AIC Riviera, which I'm buying soon as of the time of filming, and I've heard it, which is $15,000 to $17,000, and a Zal HM1, which is half the price. The Zal might be a little more resolving than the Riviera, but the Riviera gives you tonality. It gives you this lushness and warmth and thickness that you can really find with the solid-state amplifier, or even with the tube amplifier, because it's sort of a hybrid. So guys, all that to say, this is actually trading blows with those amps. So in that context, $4,000 is not an insane amount of money, because it is competing with your $15,000 amps. And I'm not going to say this is winning, but this is competing. And it's much better than any amp I've heard sub $8,000, let's say, in terms of its performance. Okay, so that's a long-winded sort of a preface. I do want to give you the specs of this, and then I'll talk about its sound once more, and I'll leave this with parting thoughts. Okay, this has two modes. I want to see if I can show you the modes. Yeah, so it's right here. It says feedback over here, and you can toggle between ZF and SS. I leave it on at zero feedback. So zero feedback is of course zero feedback, and the super symmetry mode, it reduces distortion and enhances signal balance through symmetrical design. Gives you two options to play with. One is warmer and thicker and lusher. The other is incisive with a more very different sort of a tonal balance. Gives you a forward, upper, mid range, and more dynamics and punch. So you can decide to tweak this amp in line with the headphone sound that you think is going to be most synergistic, which I find this to be an amazing feature. Fully balanced design. Output power, like I said, of 15 watts into 50 ohms. Incredible. A total harmonic distortion plus noise of 0.001% at full power. Class A matters to a lot of you. More reserve power, important for those swings in a passage when things need more power to sound more dynamic. And this volume knob, the volume knob is of course important for a lot of Summit-Fi people and others, because that's how you interface with the amp. And this has 47-step ladder type volume controller made by the Finnish manufacturer Cosmo, and it is a better volume knob than what you get with the GSX Mini or the GSX Mark II, both of which had great volume knobs. This allows for greater balance between left and right, less noise, less distortion, and what have you, and is great tactile feeling knob. Feels very, very premium. CNC machine anodized aluminum, and just to talk about its dimensions, it is 12 by 9 by 4.5, 12 by 9 by 4.5 inches, 22 pounds, so it's heavy. This also has a protective LED indicator, which means that if there's an issue with internal components or with an abnormal signal coming through from your DAC, the indicator will light up. And speaking of signals, using my Mola Tambaki, which you see over here, I prefer the 2-volt signal, because the 6-volt signal gets this to distort a bit. So keep that in mind. I think this does take or prefer lower signals, lower voltage signals. And this signal protector, this sort of LED also lights up when you switch from low gain to high gain. The protect mode turns orange for a little bit of time. Okay, so that's basically in terms of the specs. Now, inputs and outputs are pretty evident. I will hold this up so you can get a sense of what this has in terms of inputs and outputs. Okay, so this is the 6.35 single-ended XLR, so you can run two headphones at the same time. Wonderful if you want AB. And it also has a 4.4 mm. Feedback, I've talked about gain between high and low, and then input you can switch between one RCA and two XLR. So you can use two DACs with this if you had to. And then the power toggle. The fact that this has these tactile toggle switches makes me excited, because I am a bit of a old school sort of a guy when it comes to my amp aesthetics and my amp controls. Okay, so now in terms of outputs, very, very basic. It's of course it's a transformer, and then you have these two inputs, XLR and RCA, and of course you have the power socket. That's it, guys. This was a bit fatiguing to hold up, as might be evident. In terms of its sonic features, this is an interesting sound, right? This sound, straight off the bat, will pair well with the sleepy, laid-back sort of headphone. The high-frequency Susvara is not a sleepy, laid-back headphone. It used to be my favorite, but increasingly I find it to be ever so slightly sleepy and laid-back. What this does to the Susvara is that Susvara is very fast, by the way. So this, in a certain sense, slows the Susvara down just a bit. Somehow, the tempo of this amp is ever so slightly more realistic than a lot of other faster amps that I find. It reminds me of my Sony WM1ZM2, which is a digital audio player. The Sony is a very premium DAP for IEMs, and the Sony slows down transients and the presentation by 0.001%, enough so that you just get a slightly better sense of the linger of notes. And what that does is it makes things sound a bit warmer, more tactile, more realistic, and more resolving. So this has that effect. So because the Susvara has almost electrostat-like speed, it pairs really well with this because it's slowed down. And Susvara lacks in punch and slam, which this then fills out. And great lateral staging as well. And Susvara has great front to back, so this is very good pairing. Overall, in terms of the amp characteristics, if you want to get a sense of its bass, mid-range, and treble, I would say its strength is its bass, because the bass renders almost every headphone dynamic driver like, which I think is the highest praise you can give to any headphone. Because when I think about the Focal headphones or the ZMF headphones, even though an Abyss AB1266 will give you more bass power and impact, there is a certain bass timbre with ZMF and Focal and even Sennheiser dynamic drivers that I think is more accurate to real life and more akin to real life in terms of bass timbre and texture and decay. This somehow renders all the bass that I've heard from every headphone a bit dynamic driver like. So you get very good bass timbre, very good bass texture and slam and power and grunt. Mid-range here I think is transparent. I don't perceive any coloration of the mid-range. If you want something warmer, you can tube it with the preamp, with the tube preamp. I don't find this mid-range overly warm or inviting. Of course, you can toggle between SS and ZF and figure out if you like the slightly warmer presentation. But I wouldn't say you should get this if you're looking for a solid-state amp that gives you a warm mid-range, because it's revealing. I don't think it's warm. Treble is extended, and on certain modes, the treble can be somewhat sharp. So you want to make sure you understand exactly whether ZF or SS is for you, because the treble presentation just does change. If not drastically, it changes considerably. So pay attention to what I'm saying. you can tweak this amp according to what headphone you're driving vis-a-vis the treble performance, and you should. In terms of technical performance, I would say the resolution here is just mind-blowing. It almost trades blows with my Audma Maestro HPA1, but the Audma is a $10,000 amp, 2.5 times more expensive, and definitively more resolving. Soundstage is not as wide as Audma, but nothing is. Audma has the widest soundstage I've ever heard, but it's good. It's a good soundstage. It's got great height, which is rare in headphones of this price class. Imaging, I think it holds its own against $10,000 amps. It's very distinct, precise. Timbre is beautiful. Speed is a bit slower, I think, but punch is as good as it gets. So this is a unique sounding amp, and a lot of people like pairing it with tube preamps because it just somehow synergizes beautifully. This has elements of a tube amp in how it does bass. The bass is slower and heavier and textured. You get a lot of these fine nuances in the bass, which you also get with my Felix Euphoria tube amp. Tube amps can be amazing for bass, guys, not just for slam, but realism. So this and a tube pre really synergize well to give you the best of bass. Mid-range is warmed up by a tube preamp, and even treble is warmed up in a lot of cases. So I think this is a fantastic device. Justin is coming out with a hybrid version of this with a tube preamp stage, which might be worth getting. But this standard version, which is what this is, no bells and whistles other than the amazing components this already has, is marvelous. For most of you, it does get better with a tube pre. I just wanted to leave you guys with those thoughts because these are my honest thoughts and opinions. I don't get paid to say anything positive about Headamp or this amp, but this is a fabulous, marvelous amp, and I can't think of a single amp that does sound as well as this does in this price point, guys. I mean, I've had this for a while now, along with my Audma $10,000 device, $4,000 tube amp, OTL as expensive as it gets as far as OTLs go. In most cases, I have an Imanis, I have a TC coming in, a Caldera. So I'm not looking necessarily to get value. I'm looking for performance at this stage of my life as an audiophile. This I'm keeping for performance, not value. That's to say that how good this is compared to some of the best stuff out there. If you look at any electric amp, I think this will out-resolve it, out-punch it, and out-power it. If you look at the Ferrum stuff is incredible for their price. This gives you a different flavor, and I think more punch and more stage. I would take this over the Nimbus US5 Pro, which is Bioelectric Lake People's flagship amp, because that sounded cloudy and muddy compared to this. This has extreme clarity. There is almost no situation in which I would take another amp in the $5,000 price point over this. So guys, sub $5,000, this gets my highest recommendation, with the caveat that you might need to figure out whether SS or ZF works for you, because those two features or those two sonic presentations are very different from each other. So that's it for me, guys. I hope this was useful. Sajid Ahmed signing out, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye-bye.